Hey everyone, Wednesday's here, which means new comic book day and another episode of My Wednesday Comics. Here's what I got today. Surprise, surprise, Transformers number 2. I actually talked about Transformers number 1 last episode, for those of you who saw it, so I had no idea this issue was coming out this week, but it's really great because it's fresh on my mind from last week. Petrol Head number 1. This is a new book by Rob Williams and Pye Parr. I picked this up based on the cover image and the really cool title of Petrol Head. It's also very sci-fi looking, so that totally appeals to me. For those of you who follow me on Twitter/X, I posted earlier this week that I just received this book in the mail that I'm really excited to talk about, which is the Arzak Artbook by the legendary Mobius. And finally, out of the indie scene, this one is really cool. It's a self-published book by an 11-year-old artist named Hunter D, and it's called Puke. I got to meet this kid at a comic book store signing that he did here locally, so I'm super excited to show you guys his work. All right, so let's get going. Here's the first book, Transformers number 2 by Daniel Warren Johnson and Mike Spicer. And I'll go pretty quickly through this book since I talked about it already last episode. Daniel Warren Johnson starts off with this kind of idyllic scene with Optimus Prime going, "Oh, how beautiful the world is," and then he steps on a deer and realizes that he's not inside Cybertron anymore, where everything is metal and hard. And so he has this long conversation with Spike, who, as many of you Transformers fans remember, he's the kid from the cartoon series. And they just start talking about how they need Energon. So they're setting up the whole story. And the art obviously is still great. And it's just a really fun read. It feels serious and the stakes feel high, but at the same time it still has the fun of kids playing with toys and just making up stories and this absurdity of these large robots that transform into vehicles. But basically Starscream claps and splats this one pilot. So it's pretty brutal, which is why the stakes kind of go up high, more than just a quote-unquote kids comic. I love this mid-transformation moment here with Optimus Prime. He also uses a lot of panels, which is pretty interesting. A lot more panels, I'd say, than per page than your average comic book, but I never find that it's distracting or that it doesn't work. It's not detrimental to the book by any means. I think it's just the style of storytelling he does, but because stuff moves pretty fast, I never found that it was distracting or took me, was trying to cram too much stuff down my throat. But again, issue number 2, it's really fun, just as fun as issue number 1. I recommend picking that up. This book, Petrol Head, is by Rob Williams and Pye Parr. I had not heard of either of these guys before. I'm not familiar with their work. I did look up Pye Parr's website once I found out he was the artist and check that out, and I'll put a link in this video, but his stuff is really cool. He definitely likes cars. He definitely likes technical stuff. And the thing that really struck me about this book when I picked it up was the colors. Yeah, it's Pye Parr. He's doing his own colors. When artists, you see it more and more these days of artists doing everything. So they're doing pencils, inks, and colors. Probably because a lot of stuff is done digitally these days. So it's a lot easier to handle all of the processes. But still, I have a lot of respect for artists who do it all. Did he do letters too? Yep, letters. So he's just kind of a one-stop shop. But anyway, the colors in this in particular, the drawing is great. Excellent drawings, really solid technical stuff. Like I said, lots of cars, lots of robots. But as you can see, the colors, they're just very, very saturated, very vibrant, very stylized, almost monochromatic in certain areas. Really, really cool. His designs are great. This robot head is awesome. He has a few of them, and all of his car designs are really great. I was pleasantly surprised by the level of art in this book. Super cool. Look at that. Like the colors. Just very, very striking and stood out. It's really cool robot design again. And now look at these like greens and these complementary colors with the reds up here. It's nice. Very nice. And he can draw humans too. And environments. So he seems to be a very, very talented dude. I love these designs. Similar to how I had mentioned, I love post-apocalyptic stuff. I love sci-fi. And when it's done really well, it's awesome. Anyway, you can just get a sense of the colors and the designs and the storytelling. Yeah, I'm surprised I hadn't heard of his work before, but I'll definitely be looking into more and keeping up with this series. Love it. Love these blues. Even the hue that he picks. Like he picks a blue, but the particular blue that he picks. It's very, very interesting. The greens here. And yeah, really, really neat colors. Looks awesome. So Petrol Head. There's a couple sketches back here. And I guess this is advertisement for Petrol Head 2 coming out. Looks like a pretty awesome book. Excited to read through that. Now, the ever amazing Moebius. I will never ever get tired of looking at Moebius's work. He is on a different level. And I think what struck me about this book, and all of his books, to be honest, but this book in particular, is just the range, just seeing the range, and you'll see as I go through it, the range of what Moebius could do as an artist is really remarkable. For those of you who don't know, Arzak was a character that he created that kind of this like philosophical, just went on these philosophical journeys, and he has a story, but he's just traveling. He's just a traveler, and he experiences things. And this book is a compilation of different iterations of Arzak and the different stories that he went through, the different journeys he went through, and just Moebius's exploration of him. You can see like his pen and ink stuff, just strictly pen and ink stuff, is phenomenal. But then you see it next to a painting like this, and it's just incredible. When people talk about trying to find their style, like Moebius had a million different styles, and he did them all really well. He could draw super complicated, like, look at these, how complicated and highly rendered this drawing is with the forms and the fabric and the folds and textures. and then he'd draw something incredibly simple like this. So this book is cool because Moebius himself was French, so they have the French, but then they have sections that are translated in English too. Look at that. This like crazy sci-fi landscape. It's amazing. His environments, his colors. He's influenced everything. He's influenced Star Wars. He influenced Tron, Willow, Aliens. All of those movies he was hired to work on as a concept artist. And you can see why. Moebius he also had a long series of westerns that he drew called Blueberry. He also did a comic or graphic novel series in the 80s, I want to say, 80s, 90s, called Inkle. There's I think this is Blueberry. He even does these like tonal drawings. Whew. It's killer. It would take me a lifetime to do just one of these, let alone a whole book full. And he's got tons of work. Look at this pencil sketch. Crazy. The reproductions in this book are awesome. Really, really well done. The scans are really great. The colors are beautiful. You can even see the texture on the paper. You can see that like Western influence. It's amazing contour mark making. More like a spiritual explorer. Look at that. Incredible. I had this crazy story. There was one convention that I went to in LA, my studio that I had at the time. We had a booth, and they had this middle area where they had these guest artists would go and they would just draw there, and people could sit there and watch it, and they'd project it on a video. And just so happened that in front of our booth was Moebius. And I have a video, actually, I think I took, I'll have to find it, of him just sitting there drawing, and he had music playing and he was drawing, and it was just like watching a master, a genius at work. He was really playful, very kind, and even his wife was walking around and came to our booth, and we just started throwing stuff at her as far as like, here, just take this. Like, we were selling things like t-shirts and books, and we just handed it to her. We just gave her all his stuff, and she was very, very kind and very, very grateful for it. But that was my run-in with Moebius. And he's since passed away, but his wife takes care of his whole estate and all his artwork, and was involved in producing this book. So his body of work will carry on for his family for a long, long time. I love this piece. It's so crazy to me that it is Arzak in a museum looking at a skeleton fossil on the wall, but like he painted all this. It's crazy. There's a Miyazaki Moebius artist exhibit, which maybe some of these works were in. Two geniuses. But look at this like cartoony style. This is a self-portrait of Moebius, but so cartoony. And then this, like, hyper real. It's awesome. Look how simple that shape is. I love this page. It's just Arzak pushing. Yeah. Because he's Moebius, he can do that. It's another self-portrait. You can see how Arzak kind of just evolved over time. Different looks. It's that kind of almost a little bit more feminine here. Moebius has a huge influence on Geof Darrow, who currently working on Shaolin Cowboy. That's his main book that he works on. But Geof Darrow did Hardboiled with Frank Miller, and Big Guy and Rusty Boy Robot with Frank Miller. An amazing, amazing artist in his own right. And he went to France and worked with Moebius, and you can see the influence in his style. This book is beautiful. I have a bunch of books of Moebius's work, but this one in particular is pretty incredible. I don't know how this guy did all the work that he did. He just kept on drawing. It's really incredible. Wow, look at that. That's bananas rendering. One of the flip through books I did on Monday, it was actually the day I got this book and I was inspired to do it. I did a flip through book of Moebius called 40 Days in the Desert. You can check it out. I'll post a link. Maybe I'll superimpose a link on this video. But it's a series he did called 40 Days in the Desert, and Arzak appears in a lot of it. It's all pen and ink. Whew, my gosh. Then you can paint like this. And it's pencil drawing. Getting really abstract here. Like spiritual. Oof, it's amazing. It's a great book. I highly recommend it. I purchased it through Stuart Ng Books, which I get a lot of art books from him. They curate amazing work, not only from American comics, but European comics and Japanese comics. I highly recommend checking out Stuart Ng Books. Puke. So I heard about this book through a friend whose former coworker, was the mother of Hunter. And he said, he knew I loved comics, so he was like, hey, my friend's son is having a signing. Would you want to go see it? So I was like, yeah, totally. And I went to go check out this kid's book, and I met Hunter and an 11-year-old kid. But the amazing thing is his comics were like this. This is not what you imagine an 11-year-old's comics to be. They felt like they were in the same vein as R. Crumb comics from the 60s and 70s and Haight-Ashbury. Like these really very independent, self-referential, self-deprecating comics. Such a weird and amazing, unique perspective on just his experiences. And they're funny, and this is his drawing of himself, and he's just talking, and he's really witty, and I was totally blown away by this. And he published this himself. He found a company that you can print your comics book with. He produced the artwork and got them published, and then brought them to a comic book store. And James, the owner of Isotope, loved it so much, and he's a super great supporter of kids and up-and-coming artists and just comic art in general. And so he said, hey, let's do a signing of your book at my store. And so he did, and it was awesome because Hunter just has this confidence about him that no 11-year-old should have at that age. And he just knows who he is. He knows what kind of stories he wants to tell. He knows what kind of comics he wants to create. It was just amazing to meet him. And I think this kid is going to go far. He definitely is a unique voice. He is not a typical superhero comic kind of kid. And I think he's working on his third book too right now. So I'm for sure a fan, and I see big things coming from him. So I just wanted to wrap up really quick to talk about some of the feedback I've been getting, which thank you guys so much for those of you who have given feedback. One of the things I've been still trying to figure out is length. And am I doing too many books? Am I going too in depth in each book? Still trying to feel that out. But in the meantime, one of the things I figured out how to do through YouTube was to set up chapters. So if you look down here, you can actually jump from book to book to book if you don't want to sit through the whole thing. The other suggestion that I got was maybe I can add the links to creators of the books that I review each week. So moving forward, I'll do that. I may go back and add them to the descriptions in the previous episodes as well, because it's really cool if, somebody's interested in the book and they want to find out more. That's part of what this is about. The other thing that has come up was whether or not I should be reviewing different sorts of books. And to be honest, I kind of just am picking books that interest me. Maybe that's a little bit of a narrow audience. This is how it is when I walk through a comic book store. I'm not one of those collectors that buys every single new book. I'm pretty selective. Maybe I'm cheap too, but I'm pretty selective about the books that I pick up. But usually the ones that I pick up, I'm very excited about. So it takes a lot for me to plunk down the money to grab a book. But when I do, I'm a big fan. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. I might just be talking to myself on these videos, which is okay. It's not only the books that I pick up every week, but I'm trying to mix in other books that are in my collection, which I think would be interesting, like the Arzak book or Hunter's book that might not be readily available to you. I did get some comments that people liked my soft voice and pacing, which thank you very much. Part of the reason is I filmed this pretty late at night, and so I'm tired and I don't want to wake up the rest of my family, but I'll keep working on it. I'm not going to turn into one of those crazy hey, it's YouTube, check out these comics. I'm a YouTube guy and these are the books that you should get. I mean, I don't think I'm not that kind of person, but hopefully I'm not boring either. And finally, a couple people had asked oh, what about an intro video, which I thought was a pretty good idea. So I'm definitely considering doing one. I realized that I just kind of jump into talking about comics and I don't really explain who I am. For those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Rocky Ballesteros and I love comics. I've always loved comics since I've been a kid, and I'm just wanting to share that love now with the YouTube audience. I think that it's really cool that you can connect with people from all over the world who have similar interests with you. And I just want to share in that joy. It's like, I remember picking up books as a kid and going to my friend's house and just talking about them and say, hey, did you see this book? Did you see that book? And this is kind of the same thing, except I'm just talking to a camera and interacting with people online. But the love, at the heart of it, the love for comics is still there. So that's just what I want to spread. That's what I want to interact with people on, and hopefully that's interesting enough to people out there. It's been really awesome these last couple of weeks, just seeing people start subscribing to the channel and liking the videos and commenting and giving me feedback. It's been really great, and I can see the appeal of building your audience. The ultimate goal is to work on my own comic and produce that and share in the process of that, because I think that's really fun. I really enjoy seeing other creators do that as well. That'll take some time, obviously, but we're getting there. But in the meantime, please continue to watch, subscribe, comment, tell people about it. I appreciate it to no end. The idea that other people are out there watching it and potentially liking it kind of blows my mind. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your support, and I'll see you next week.